Something extraordinary happened in the California desert last night, and if you haven't heard about it yet, buckle up because this story has everything. Heartbreak, triumph, tears, and a moment of sportsmanship so pure it genuinely stopped the entire tennis world in its tracks. We are talking about the third round of the BNP Paribas Open at Indian Wells, a match between world number 4 Coco Gauff and 20-year-old Filipino sensation Alexandra Eala, a contest that started as a routine assignment for the American star and ended in one of the most emotionally charged retirements this sport has seen in years. And the ripple effects of what unfolded on Stadium 1 are still being felt from Manila all the way to Miami. Now, to truly understand the magnitude of this moment, you have to rewind just a few weeks to Dubai, where these exact same two players squared off in the quarterfinals of the Dubai Tennis Championships. That match was not close. Gauff was dominant, clinical, almost ruthless in the way she dismantled Eala, rolling to a 6-0, 6-2 victory that made it look like the gap between them was simply too enormous to bridge anytime soon. Most analysts walked away from that one thinking Eala was talented, yes, promising, absolutely, but nowhere near ready to compete with the very top tier of the WTA. Fast forward to Indian Wells, same players, completely different story, and the result? Alexandra Eala has advanced to the round of 16 at one of the most prestigious hardcourt events on the planet, defeating Coco Gauff 6-2, 2-0 after the American was heartbreakingly forced to retire due to a severe left arm injury that left the entire stadium in stunned, aching silence. Let that sink in for a moment, because this is not just a tennis result. This is a seismic shift in the narrative of the 2026 WTA season. Stadium 1 at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden holds over 16,000 fans, and on this particular night, it felt like every single one of them was holding their breath simultaneously. The Filipino diaspora in Southern California showed up in absolutely massive numbers, waving flags, chanting, filling the stands with a kind of passionate energy that genuinely neutralized whatever home court advantage Gauff might have expected walking onto that court. You could feel it through the screen. There was something electric in the air even before the first ball was struck. Eala had come into this match off the back of an exhausting nearly 3-hour victory over Diana Schneider in the previous round, and the conventional wisdom said she would be running on fumes by now. She was supposed to be fatigued, supposed to be vulnerable, supposed to be the kind of spent opponent that a player like Gauff feasts on. But from the very first exchange, that narrative crumbled. Eala looked sharp. Not just good, not just competitive, but genuinely sharp, moving with purpose, striking cleanly from the baseline, deploying her drop shot at precisely the right moments, and doing something that her coaching team had clearly spent considerable time preparing. She was refusing to let Gauff settle into her rhythm. Instead of trading power for power, which is a losing battle for almost anyone on tour, Eala disrupted, varied, and controlled the tempo of the match with a tactical intelligence that seemed to belong to someone a decade older. The drop shot deserves its own conversation because it was arguably the single most effective weapon Eala deployed throughout the match. By mixing her deep, penetrating baseline balls with sudden feathery drops over the net, she was forcing Gauff to cover the full length of the court vertically, not just side to side. Gauff, whose game is built around relentless horizontal baseline grinding, suddenly found herself sprinting forward, then recovering back, then being pulled wide, and that physical demand on top of what was clearly already a compromised left arm created a cascading series of problems that would eventually bring the match to its devastating conclusion. And speaking of that left arm, let's talk about Gauff's serve because even before the physio was called out, attentive viewers could see the warning signs. The ball toss was off. Not just slightly off, but noticeably, visibly inconsistent in a way that made commentators uncomfortable. It was drifting. It was forcing Gauff to reach awkwardly, to compensate with her body, rather than flowing naturally through the kinetic chain of the motion. And this wasn't entirely new. Gauff's serve has been a source of concern throughout the early part of the 2026 season. Statistics showed she was winning just 38% of her second serve points coming into this tournament, which is a historically low number for a player of her caliber. She had been committing alarming numbers of double faults, at one point earlier in the season putting up 16 in a single match, and the suspicion around the tour was that she was already nursing something, already managing discomfort and trying to compensate by rolling her second serve in softly rather than trusting it fully. Eala's team picked up on this. They identified it as a weapon and deployed a very specific tactical response. Every time Gauff went to a second serve, Eala stepped aggressively inside the baseline, taking the ball early, stepping into it, and immediately seizing control of the point before Gauff could settle. She wasn't just returning, she was attacking, turning Gauff's moments of defensive vulnerability into offensive opportunities. It was brilliant preparation turned into brilliant execution. Then came the moment that changed everything. With Gauff trailing 5-2 in the first set, the physio arrived on court and the mood shifted instantly. A lengthy medical timeout followed. Heavy strapping was applied to the left forearm and shoulder. The crowd fell into an uncomfortable hush. You could see the worry on the faces in the stands. You could see the frustration and the pain etched across Gauff's expression. She is, by any reasonable measure, one of the toughest athletes on the WTA Tour. This is a player who has competed in over 400 professional matches and retired only once before in her entire career, way back in 2022 in Cincinnati. The fact that she was even considering stopping spoke volumes about the severity of what she was feeling.
But she didn't stop, not yet.
Because Coco Gauff is built from something stubborn and fierce, she came back out. She tried to continue. She stepped back onto that court and attempted to compete through what was clearly agonizing pain.
And for a few games, she managed. But the serve was gone.
The toss had become a barely functioning liability.
The double faults mounted.
The left arm, which for a right-handed two-handed backhand player is not a secondary limb but a critical driving force through the contact zone, could not deliver the power or the stability required to compete at this level. Every backhand she struck was a grimace. Every ball toss was a gamble.
And Eala, to her immense credit, didn't ease off.
She didn't become passive out of sympathy or uncertainty. She stayed locked in, she stayed aggressive, and she played her game. The first set closed at 6-2. Then the second set began, and within 2 games, it was over. Gauff walked to the net. She looked at her coaching box one last time, she looked down at her arm, and she made the decision that any intelligent athlete in her position would eventually have to make. She approached Eala, and in a moment that has already been clipped and shared millions of times across social media, she embraced her and said clearly, "I'm sorry. I hate to do this." And Eala's response, this 20-year-old kid in one of the biggest moments of her career, was not celebration. It was not pumping her fist or dropping to her knees in ecstasy.
It was tears.
Genuine, unscripted tears of empathy for a competitor she deeply respects. There was no joy in her eyes in that moment, only compassion, and that single image tells you everything you need to know about the character of Alexandra Eala. In her post-match interview, she said she really didn't want to win this way. She called Gauff an amazing competitor and a genuine role model. She acknowledged that International Women's Day weekend felt like the right moment to honor players like Gauff who have carried the weight of global superstardom since their teenage years, opening doors for the next generation of women in sport. The crowd reaction was something genuinely moving to witness. Filipino fans in the stands were crying from joy and sorrow simultaneously, celebrating a piece of history while aching for the fallen champion on the other side of the net. Because this was history. Alexandra Eala becoming the first Filipino woman ever to reach the 4th round of the Indian Wells main draw is not a footnote. It is a landmark moment for Southeast Asian tennis, for Filipino sport, and for the global expansion of the WTA Tour. When Eala took the microphone and addressed the crowd in Tagalog, the stadium erupted in a way that transcended the match itself. It became something cultural, something communal, something that will live in the memory of everyone who was there. The Philippines is a country whose sporting identity has long been defined by basketball and boxing, and to see a young woman plant her flag on one of the grandest hardcourt stages in professional tennis is a genuinely profound thing. And yet the relationship between these two players adds another layer of warmth and complexity to this whole story. These aren't strangers with a manufactured rivalry.
They know each other. They respect each other.
They actually partnered up in doubles at the Italian Open last year and reached the quarterfinals together. The hug at the net wasn't performative.
It was real.
The apology from Gauff, despite the fact that she was the one suffering, was an act of grace that says everything about who she is as a person and as a sportsperson. She felt guilty for not being able to give Eala the proper competitive victory she deserved, and that kind of emotional generosity in a moment of personal pain is extraordinarily rare. Now let's talk about what comes next, starting with Eala, because her tournament is not over and the challenges do not get easier from here. In the round of 16, she faces Czech powerhouse Linda Noskova, a hard-hitting young player who sends a very different kind of ball through the court, flatter, heavier, more penetrating, and far less susceptible to the drop shot tactics that worked so beautifully against Gauff. Eala will need to emotionally reset after the adrenaline and drama of this match, avoid any kind of emotional hangover, and bring the same disciplined tactical mindset into a completely different puzzle. But here is the thing. In terms of ranking points and prize money, this result is already transformative for her. She is looking at a guaranteed climb into the top 30 in the world, which means direct entry into every major tournament for the remainder of the season.
No more qualifying draws.
No more grinding through lucky loser spots. She has earned her seat at the table in the most tangible way possible. For Gauff, the picture is far more uncertain and frankly quite worrying. The immediate priority is imaging, an MRI to determine the precise nature and extent of the left arm injury. Is it a strained forearm flexor?
A shoulder impingement?
Nerve compression running down from the neck? The answer to that question will determine everything that follows. With the Miami Open, her home state tournament, beginning in just over a week, her participation is genuinely in doubt. And that is the best-case scenario. The more troubling concern is the clay court season that looms beyond Miami.
Gauff is a former French Open champion.
Roland Garros is where she has historically made her most significant marks, where she moves brilliantly and competes with a ferocity and comfort that elevates her game to its absolute ceiling. If this injury requires several weeks of complete rest, which given the severity suggested by a mid-match retirement seems entirely possible, she could arrive at the clay courts underprepared, rusty, and still managing discomfort. There will also be questions, fair ones, about her coaching setup and whether recent mechanical adjustments to her serve to try to protect her second delivery have inadvertently placed additional stress on her forearm and shoulder. It is a complex biomechanical puzzle with real consequences, and the team around her will need to work quickly and carefully to solve it. Because the thing about Coco Gauff is that the tour is genuinely lesser without her competing at full capacity. She is not just a top player. She is a personality, a voice, a presence that elevates the entire event she walks into. From the moment she burst onto the scene as a 15-year-old at Wimbledon, she has carried an extraordinary weight of expectation with remarkable maturity and dignity. She deserves to be healthy. She deserves to defend her titles on courts where she has poured so much of herself, and the tennis world is quietly hoping that this retirement was the smart, cautious move that protects something much bigger rather than the beginning of a prolonged injury crisis. There is something deeply human about what happened in Indian Wells last night, something that goes well beyond tennis. Professional athletes are packaged to us in highlight reels and statistics and social media personas until we forget that they are flesh and bone and nerve endings just like everyone else. Coco Gauff, with all her speed and athleticism and competitive fire, still has a left arm that can fray under pressure. She is still a 21-year-old woman navigating an almost incomprehensible level of professional demand. And Alexandra Eala, despite the flags and the chants and the history-making result, still cried at the net for an injured opponent rather than celebrating a moment she had worked her entire life toward. That tells you something real about both of these people. The sport of tennis has always had a capacity for producing these moments of unscripted emotional truth, moments where the competition fades into the background and something more fundamentally human takes center stage. A handshake becomes an embrace. A retirement becomes a shared grief. A victory becomes something tinged with sorrow. And those are the moments that make people fall in love with the sport in the first place, the ones that make you feel something beyond the scoreline. The 2026 WTA season has already delivered more drama than most seasons manage across their entire arc. From the Australian swing to the Middle Eastern hardcourts and now here in the Southern California desert, this year has been relentless, unpredictable, and absolutely riveting. And the ride is nowhere near over. Eala's round of 16 clash with Noskova is going to be worth every minute of your attention. Can she carry this momentum into a match that demands a completely different tactical approach? Can she manage the emotional weight of her own history-making run and stay grounded in the process rather than getting swept up in the magnitude of what she is achieving? These are the questions that will define the next chapter of her Indian Wells story. And for Gauff, the road back starts with rest, starts with honest medical assessment, and starts with the kind of patient, meticulous rehabilitation that champions commit to because they know the big prizes are worth protecting. She will be back. There is no version of this story where Coco Gauff does not come back fiercer and more motivated than before. That is simply who she is. But until then, tonight belongs to Alexandra Eala, to the Filipino fans who turned the California desert into something resembling a national celebration, and to the quiet, dignified beauty of two outstanding athletes reminding us why we watch this sport in the first place. Thank you for staying with this breakdown all the way through. If this kind of deep, storytelling-driven tennis analysis is what you come here for, do me a favor and hit the like button because it genuinely helps push this content toward the fans who are out there searching for it right now. Subscribe if you haven't already and turn on notifications because the 2026 season is only going to get louder from here, and you do not want to be the last one to know when the next chapter breaks.